Okay. So our focus question for this lesson study is, oh yeah, thank you so much, is how are we going to get our students engaged in more rigorous thinking? That's our goal together. And that's our focus question. I'm gonna sort of stop being the sage on the stage because I am the facilitator, not the expert. I don't have any of these answers pre-made for us. This is where we now collaboratively meet, like all of us as peers, will come up with this together. So if our focus question is, how do we get students engaged in more rigorous thinking, what is our common goal that all of us will leave today with this goal in mind next week in our classes? And we need it to be focused and attainable in our 2-week cycle that we're gonna see with our lesson study, and it needs to be student focused. So whatever our goal is needs to be around what students are doing, what students are thinking. It needs to be student driven, not like, oh, my goal is that I'm gonna have 5 higher order questions in my lesson. That might be the strategy you use to reach your goal, but our goal needs to be student driven, student focused, student outcomes. So maybe to help us with this, I'm just gonna pull up the effective bullet points as far as LEAP goes, as this gives us some automatic good sort of jumping off points as far as what a common goal could be, since this is how we're evaluated throughout the entire year. So, yeah, right here. Yeah, can you guys all see this? There we go. So, as a group, what do we want our common goal to be? What do we want to see our students doing? What do we want to see our students thinking? I'll give you guys a minute to run through those. And as you guys see things that you think should be highlighted in our goal, let me know and I'll start underlining it. Yeah.
I like the students constructively evaluating others' reasoning and or thinking. That area there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like critiquing others in the top 4th bullet point. But wait.
Yeah. Just so justify
Yeah.
and critiquing the reasoning of others. I want to hear from 2 of us. I want to hear from more of us. This is a common goal that we're all going to take away, so I want to make sure we're all owning this goal.
And can we second that?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Second that, okay.
So what is it, second at the bottom is like use relevant evidence to construct written and verbal positions to justify conclusions.
So written and verbal, which we also see up here, the verbal and in writing. So as far as LEAP goes, this is sort of what those beginning slides were. It's we have to be able to see the thinking. So we have to be able to see in the lesson, and they're not listening really anymore, or they're not really thinking. They might just be trying to get through. So I think the appropriate support is something that I like to think about as well.
I think that's huge because I think our kids want to learn.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that they need the access point to it.
Yeah, it's if they feel set up to do it. Yeah.
I think that would also tie in with the real world situations then. I know my students really get into problems that are more applicable to what they see every day.
Mm-hmm.
That's in the second bullet point.
As an access point, yeah.
Yeah, multiple contexts, real world. I agree. I feel like with Matthews and I, because we co-plan obviously, when we really hit a good real world example first, I feel like the kids are just a little more engaged and they care a little bit more. Okay. So, what is the goal that we're gonna keep in mind? What are we gonna actually write for ourselves? Because this is gonna be the goal that all of our lessons should be trying to reach next week. And then we'll we'll decide what does that actually look like when we pop in and observe you. If they came to any of our classrooms, we're teachers, what are we doing, what are students doing? And then we'll get into the strategies to get there. But how should we phrase our goal? We talked about justifying, critiquing, appropriate support, written and verbal, and the real world.
Is this written like an objective here?
Yeah, we could write this like a
Students will be
CLO.
able to,
Yeah, we can write it like an objective.
I mean, if we just put all that stuff together, it would be critique the writing of other students in a real world problem, right?
How about just the work?
What's that?
Critique the work.
Critique the work.
Yeah. Other students. That way they could talk about it. They could
critiquing writing would
critique
be.
oral.
Yeah.
We have some Socratic stuff we're planning to do.
So specifically, our goal will be whatever it looks like in our classes, they'll be critiquing the reasoning of others. And how do we want them to do that? How do we want to, what's our goal? Like, do we want it verbally, writing, or both?
I think verbally.
Writing.
Should we say verbally or writing?
Yeah.
To kind of make it flexible for us?
And or, yeah.
Okay. Critique the reasoning of others or in writing.
Or both, yeah.
Yeah.
Like you could do one and the other.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there anything we want to bring in as far as like really tying us to making it real world or making sure like students are using supports or resources? Because we haven't brought in those two ideas, the real world or the appropriate support.
I know that.
And maybe that would be the look for that we have here, like that in order for students to do this, they have to be able to use the supports we provide.
I think one of the look forwards we're gonna need is a rubric. If we're critiquing.
Okay,
figuring
so are
out-
we good with this goal?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, because I want to make sure the goal's solid, and we can just sort of go through the look for. So this is what our goal is as a group. Students will critique the reasoning of others verbally or in writing.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is that going to look like? If you go into any of our classrooms on the day that you're really trying to hit this goal, what is it going to look like? What are teachers doing? What are students doing?
I think you need to give an incentive to STEM. I think that's one of the big things. Like
Accountable toxins.
accountable talk STEM, especially with critiquing. Because like, one of the big things about trying to be positive classroom stuff like that is, I'm starting with like, you totally got that wrong.
Okay.
And that's a good support, right?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a great support, especially if it's like we're really pushing the verbal or in writing. Then we want them to use our like vocabulary, and we want them to sound academic. So yeah, so per accountable talk for the discussion or the writing. Okay. One thing that comes to my mind, in order for students to be able to critique each other's reasoning, they have our lesson has to give students opportunities to first justify their reasoning to another student. And then the students can then critique each other. But you can't just jump into critiquing if your students aren't first justifying their reasoning to each other.
Or they solve the problem. Like for a math class.
Right.
like,
But that's still
solve-
justifying their
yeah,
reasoning.
Solve problem A and then partner B. Using this as the exemplar to evaluate.
Do we want that as a look for, like making sure students are justifying their reasoning as well?
Like you're not giving a problem that's been done. and
Or
say-
or is that what we look for? Like that's what I'm sort of getting at is what does this critique look like? Do we provide like a pre-planned mistake on the board and then students are just critiquing that pre-planned mistake? Or are students justifying with each other and then critiquing each other?
I think that'd be like a form of gradual
Both?
release.
Yeah.
Either or.
Yeah, and modeling, this is how
Yeah.
I critique this.
Let's critique my mistake. Like, what mistake have I made? It's how would we talk about that?
It's like, I always like try to use like, I agree with or I disagree because sixth graders, it's.
So like gradual release of what? Of like critique?
Sometimes the
Well,
student
like
mistakes
modeling
are.
how to critique
Exactly.
someone.
Where we just see like the T sort of modeling what that should look like before you actually have them do it.
Yeah, so you don't have students say like, you suck because you spelled that wrong.
You dumb, yeah, right. Okay. Nah, it's a thing, sometimes if you don't shout that out, that could be something that happens. What are some other look fors that let us know that this is happening?
I like having students point out like things that are good about
Yeah.
the work that's happened, but also
Like a positive sandwich type thing, yeah.
Grows and glows.
No. Positive sandwich.
You incorrectly critiqued.
So praise in addition to the critique? I think one thing is we need, I think we should have, like, there should be clear collaboration expectations, like who they're talking to or who they're collaborating with or who they're critiquing. So like you need clear like collaborative or like sort of like verbal structures. So that way it's clear when you ask them to critique, they don't get to choose whoever they want. Like it should be really clear who they're talking to and how for like how long.
So just clear expectations for the
Like-
critique, whether it's verbally or in writing
Yeah.
or whatever.
great stuff on Pinterest for this. How to make goals. Like you're critiquing this person. You're
Any other
asking
things
them.
that because this is what when we go and observe one of us in this room, this is what we're gonna be looking for. When you guys go in to observe that teacher, you're gonna look to see, are these things happening? Because this should be evidence of meeting our goal. Yeah.
Can we add, the use of academic vocabulary in groups?
Yeah.
Group forms?
So, and the goal maybe even, like critique the reasoning of others verbally or in writing, comma, using academic vocab. Okay. Do we like that, guys, as a group?
Sure.
Like holding that act, yeah, I think so, using. Is that still taken?
In collaborative groups, yeah. It stopped.
Got it. So using academic vocab. And so we already have clear expectations for like collaboration and critique. Because I think part of this is assuming that there is some collaboration going on then. It's not students silently, independently working.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be if you like rotate papers and they have like a rubric to follow.
True.
You're
Are there
also-
any,
No.
yeah, I like this goal. Are there any other things other look fors that we should be able to see if we're achieving this goal?
I do think we need a rubric.
A rubric? What kind of a rubric?
I mean, how are they going to, what are they critiquing against? I mean, just some sort of rubric, it could be like A, B, C, D work, it could be.
But for like what good critique looks like, this is an A-level critique,
Well,
a
if they're
B-level
critiquing,
critique.
if they're critiquing something, they need a standard to be going against. So, I mean, the rubric could just be like an A paper and an F paper, and they can kind of pick the differences out, or it could be bullet points of what.
Or even like
levels
if
of
you're
success
looking
look
at this student's work, your rubric would be like a checklist. Did they use 3 academic vocab words? What are 3 things you agree with? What are 3 things you disagree with?
I'd say some sort of like rubric or like criteria of success for the students, so that way they know if their critique was like on point. It sounds like you can sort of do you as a teacher, but there should be some sort of like standard of success. Like, you know you critiqued well if you can check these things off, or you know you can critique well if you do everything in the A category and not the C or D category. So however you want to communicate that measure of success, there needs to be some like communication of quality. Okay, and we'll make it sort of flexible. If you want a rubric or criteria or like a checklist, that's fine. But
Wait,
there
are you
should
talking about a rubric though if you're the critiquer, like how well you critiqued, or a rubric for like how you're
Or the rubric for like the problem done correctly.
yeah.
Like if
You
they're,
could
if
have
they're
two different
critiquing
That's more
rubrics.
what I was feeling like.
I feel
Some
like
of my
that's now
students-
getting to the more specifics that you guys can interpret that how you would like.
Okay.
Like if you would if it's going to help your students critique the reasoning of others by having a checklist of what should happen in a correct problem, then maybe yours is a checklist. Maybe if you want to like if your rubric is around like the quality of your critique, then maybe that's where your rubric looks like. But I think we should keep it general enough so you guys all feel the flexibility to make it happen in the way that you would as a teacher. Because that's the goal. We're going to have common goals and common look-fors, but since we're 6th through 11th grade in here right now, math and science, we want to keep it general so we can tailor these goals to our classrooms. Anything else that we want to include here? And I'll send this out. I'm going to save this and send it out as well. Okay. So the next step is, what are the strategies that we are going to use to make this happen? And so this is where I want to sort of brainstorm, pulling from what you guys already do rigorously in your classroom, plus some of the stuff that we learned and the I teach. So like, what would be an example of like some simple strategies you guys use to like bring rigor out in your classroom? So we're gonna sort of make a list of strategies, and then you guys are gonna choose what you
Say
want.
the reason tables.
Or I'm gonna say, just so all of us, just some sort of written justification.
Yep.
Yeah. Because that makes them justify their reasoning in writing.
And use academic vocab.
I would say just a basic turn and talk is a really easy, simple strategy that instantly gets kids verbally